Welcome to episode 3 of The Female Inventor. Get your hydration ready and let's dive into the life of a beauteous inventor and actress, Miss Hedy Lamarr. Have you ever wondered who came up with Wi-Fi, GPS, Bluetooth, two-way radios? Well, Hedy is known as the mother of Bluetooth and the mother of all of these inventions because she invented a frequency hopping radio system in World War II. So let's get into it. Today's inventor was born November 9th, 1914 in Vienna, Austria. And I don't know how she passed the first grade because they named her Hedwig Eva Maria Keisler. That's a lot to say, especially for a little kid. Hedy was raised as an only child to a Jewish banker, and her mother was a pianist. Despite her extra long name, she excelled in her studies, completing a débutante's education at the age of 16. At a young age, she showed a natural affinity towards engineering. Like any kid, she had a million questions. She would ask her father to explain things like how the streetcar worked, what made a clock tick, and how electricity worked. Her father indulged her fascinations by explaining and showing her the ins and outs of engineering. At the age of 5, she is reported to have been able to dismantle and reassemble her music box piece by piece. It's important to note that in the 1930s, women were not allowed to seek formal education in the field of science. Therefore, Hedy had to let go of her dreams for now and choose to pursue a career. The career she chose was being an actress. Isn't that so funny? She couldn't do what she wanted to do, so she went to the whole different side of the spectrum and decided to be an actress. Anyways, she is reported to have forged a note dismissing herself from school and walked on down to a movie studio at 16. She walked in and said, "Hi, I'm Hedy. I want a job. I want to be an actress." I want to know how that worked. How could you just walk in somewhere and say, "I want a job," and get it? Where? Not in 2026. She was hired and she became the studio's script girl. But she was very quickly picked up as a star player and did many walk-ins on films. But I bet even now, you can't get a job by just walking in and saying, "Hi, I'm pretty, I want a job." What do you guys think? When I was researching, I found out that she did her first films in Germany, some German films. But they labeled them as forgettable, which I think is crazy because if you star in any film, I feel like that's a big deal. Because even right now, as I'm recording this, I have to keep looking at my paper to make sure that I'm saying what I wanted to say. So for them to memorize all that stuff, that's crazy work. I don't think they're forgettable. Miss Hedy turned heads in a movie after these so-called forgettable films by starring in a racy film called Ecstasy. This film was later banned in Germany and the US for being dangerously indecent. It was these head-turning roles that brought her into an unhappy union with a munitions baron named Fritzl Mandl in 1933. He would parade her around to all of his dealings with Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. She was expected to be beautiful and silent. Fritz believed in the idea that women should be seen and not heard. Which, that is so freaking annoying. Like, who decided that women didn't have the right to speak? Anyways, she finally had the courage to flee Austria and her unhappy marriage in 1937. This is when she landed in London. Of course, she was going to be looking for acting jobs, so this is where she met with Louis Mayer of MGM Studios. In the beginning, he only offered her $125 a week, which she turned down. Which, to be honest, back then, $125 a week was a lot of money. So for her to have the gall to turn it down with no other options, I mean, more power to you, girl, but I don't know if I could turn it down. In a sneaky move, Hetty found out that Mr. Mayer was getting on a ship to go home to the U.S., so she decided she was going to get on that ship too. She caused so much havoc just by walking around looking beautiful, saying she's an actress, that by the end of that trip, Mr. Mayer offered her $500 weekly salary, which back then is crazy. She did not turn this one down. She took this one. He had two demands. One, she had to learn English in a 6-month period of time. And two, she had to change her name because Hedwig Keisler was too German. So this is when she became Hedy Lamarr. I feel like that's just how Hollywood works. Like, they want you, but they want you to change everything about yourself to fit what they want you to be. Anyway, Hetty agreed to these terms and quickly became a bright new star in Hollywood. Her first big Hollywood role came in 1938, where she starred in a film called The Algiers. She did so well in this film that it jump-started her career throughout the 40s. Hetty is such a queen, though, because her reply to an interview question is just phenomenal. She replied, "Any girl can be glamorous. All you have to do is stand still and look stupid." As much as she enjoyed her Hollywood actress lifestyle, she never forgot about her first love, engineering. Which, why do we always have to sacrifice something that we want to do as women to fit the mold of what everybody else needs us to be and wants us to do? I don't understand that. Anyways, Hetty continued to tinker at home with her engineering. In 1940, she met a kindred spirit named George Antheil. They bonded over their mutual dislike of the happenings in Germany. Together, they were dead set that they were going to get rid of Hitler. Because Antheil was a musician, he would play the piano while they discussed ideas. This is when they started playing a game. The game they would play, one person would play a song and see if the other person could figure it out and how quickly they could start playing to the same tune. It was while playing this game that Hetty first stumbled across the idea of frequency hopping. She realized that if two musicians could play together and hop along the keyboard in sync, then someone that didn't know the song wouldn't be able to catch on and press the right keys, meaning the signals would be crossed. Together, Hetty and George applied this idea to radio-controlled torpedoes. They figured out that the Germans wouldn't be able to jam a constantly changing frequency. Now, George had some experience working with synchronized player pianos. These pianos would play in sync because they were consistently fed the same music rolls that controlled the keys to play the song. He figured out that he and Hetty could create something similar to synchronize communication between the torpedoes and the controller in the ship nearby. They determined that the signal would be continuous between the ship and the torpedo, even though it would be traveling a new frequency every second. This would mean that anyone who tried to jam the signal wouldn't know where it was coming from because it would be hopping all over the radio. It was Hetty who dubbed their new invention the frequency hopping radio. After they got everything figured out and the patent in the works, the Navy rejected their idea. They locked it away and marked it as top secret. Feeling defeated, Hetty and George went back to their regular jobs and thought that this was the end of their inventing career. This would be farther from the truth because their invention would take off in the 60s, beginning with a frequency hopping radio to jam signals from the Soviet Army during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Their invention was used to make things like the car phone in the 1970s and FCC communications in the 90s. She was not recognized for her contribution until a group of engineers recognized that Hedwig Keisler sounded a lot like Hetty, and they figured out that Miss Hetty Lamar, the beautiful actress, is the one that patented the frequency hopping radio. By this time, she was in her 80s, and when she was presented with an award for her contributions, she said, "Well, it's about damn time." Hetty's invention is still used to this day to make things like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and GPS and secure communications. So many things in our life we can thank Hetty Lamar for. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Y'all mean the world to me. Remember that you deserve it, you're worth it, and keep yourself hydrated. Please leave a comment on your thoughts, opinions, whatever. Hit that like button, and I will see you guys next week.